welcome back to another episode of Fireside Chat with Grand Design RV. Jeff, how you doing today?
I am doing great. I got to tell you, we got a great opening song. I get pumped every time I hear it.
I know.
It's just good. I hope the people out there listening to this appreciate it as much as I do, because it just gets you in the mood to talk.
Yeah, it just gets you in that mood, that frame of mind.
It does. Speaking of talking and frames of mind, this podcast, we've been doing it for goodness, we're months now. We're not weeks anymore. We're months, right?
Yeah,
we've been doing this.
Yeah.
And today we've got a special guest that I will tell you for months has been saying, when are you going to let me on this podcast? And I keep saying soon. And today I don't have to say soon anymore. Today we have the product manager for the Reflection fifth wheel and travel trailer line here at Grand Design, Mr. Ken Conlee.
Yes, welcome,
Hey,
Mr.
Ken.
Conlee.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I'd like to point out that it is much later than I wanted, but
Yeah. But now we had to make sure that we were up to snuff before we could, let someone with the, likes of yourself, with such, provenance and gravitas and all the other words that I don't know. Yeah, what they actually mean.
Well,
Look those up
we
later.
wanted to be a little more seasoned before we brought you on.
Seasoned.
So
which
that
I
we
would
can-
have expected.
Yeah.
We can offer you a better palette here.
I don't want to
So-
be embarrassed.
Right. Season's a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of like camping. You take a cast iron skillet out camping. It's got to be well seasoned, right?
See how we tied that in?
Yeah.
Camping.
Yeah. This
You guys are
podcast,
good.
Ken, is
You
about
guys are good.
camping. It's about camping. Ken, do you enjoy camping?
I do actually. It's a lot of fun. Get out there, get away from the electronics, and
Right. Right. Well, that being said, let's talk about all the electronics that we've put into the Reflection fifth wheels over the past few months. Well, actually, we'll get to that. First of all, I think we need to lay the groundwork here a little bit. Ken, how long have you been at Grand Design?
It's going on 2 years in January.
There you go.
I've been with the team. Yeah.
And you've been at the helm of Reflection for
Oh, let's say 6 months.
6 months. All right. So kind of a newer venture there, but you have been brought up. It's like you've been training your entire career for this moment, right?
Yes.
You started in the RV industry when? How long ago was that?
It'll be 10 years.
Wow.
Actually, it's 10 years in July.
Gotcha.
Wow.
And how did you get into RVs?
Well, I had a friend that kept asking me to come and join him at the previous employer, and
Mhm.
I was out of college and kind of just making mistakes. Let's just say we'll leave it at that. And wanted to come back local from the area. Grew up. My dad worked in the industry on one of the production lines, Evergreen, and so it was kind of a prestigious job. It did our family well growing up,
Mhm.
and so came back and just decided to get in it from a sales side.
Gotcha. Well, that's awesome. And so you started, and correct me if I'm wrong, you started kind of in like a trainee position, if you will.
I did.
You were kind of like, you started, and worked your way up, and here you are at the helm of one of the largest fifth wheel, by volume at least, largest fifth wheel segments in the entire industry.
Yeah, don't talk about it too much. I don't know if they know where they placed me yet.
Right. Well, good for you is what I'm saying. I mean,
Thank you.
we feel honored that you're on here. So, I assume, we'll get to the ins and outs of Reflection. I think a lot of people listening are familiar with the Reflection brand, and we can talk about that and what's on the horizon here. So, do you have a family? Are you married?
I am. I have a wife, Hannah, great, and 2 kids. My oldest daughter is 3 years old, and I have a newer child. So Collins is the oldest, and Porter is my youngest. She's 3 months. So
Wow, congratulations.
When's the last time you slept?
we don't get a lot of consistent sleep. We sleep as if the world's going to end, and,
Sure.
and you just don't know when the next sleep's going to be. So we sleep hard for hours.
Been there.
Hours.
Been there.
When you can get it, you just take it.
We take it.
Yeah,
Tom, it's interesting. Like, this is starting to kind of make sense now. Ken has consistently been the person that's been here the latest. When I'm working well into the night, writing things for our next podcast,
Right.
as I normally do. Usually 8 o'clock at night here at the office, I'll be, doing in-depth research and
burning the oil.
Exactly. And I'll finish up and I'll be like, well, there's no one here. I need to lock the doors, but there is someone here. It's Ken Conlee.
And he always makes me lock the door.
I do because I hate it. There's a lot of doors here. In fact, if you out there ever come to Grand Design, take note. There's a lot of doors. Just imagine someone, it's Ken. Ken has to lock all those every night.
Right.
So that's, but anyway, that has nothing to do with what we're actually talking about. I apologize here. So Ken, tell us a little bit about Reflection. Now, you mentioned, you've been with us for 2 years. You've been at the helm of Reflection for about 6 months, but it's a product with a storied past, right? So tell us a little bit about Reflection. If someone out there is like, well, what's Reflection? What would you tell them?
Yeah, so Reflection is a fifth wheel. We cover 4 segments, starting at an entry level with the 100 series. We have our 150 series and our full line Reflection fifth wheels, and we also make a travel trailer. So cover a lot of gambits of the industry. Reflection is really what I would call a dealer's best friend. It would be the way I would put it. We definitely give the customer a lot of things that they can buy if they're looking for something that's affordable, if they're looking for something that they're going to live in. So we cover a wide spread with the Reflection brand, which is fun to do. Keep the product design based on the need of the customer is my goal every day. And so that's what I'm trying to do with the Reflection brand.
Now, last fall, I wanted to bring up because you had an exciting new addition sometime late last year, which was in October. We went on a lifestyle trip and took the Reflection 100. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about the Reflection 100, how that's been adding that to the family of Reflection?
Yeah. So Reflection typically was at a price point somewhere in the retail range around $75,000. We found that there were customers that were looking for fifth wheels at a lower price point, and they couldn't buy a Reflection. So the 100 series came to be more price sensitive, but we've accomplished that by giving the customer something that's just simpler to own. It's not only about making it affordable, but it's also for the customer that doesn't need everything that a full Reflection has or any other fifth wheel brand, whether it be Solitude or some of our competitors. So it's easy to own. You don't have to have a lot of upkeep and maintenance. You don't have to be overwhelmed. If you're a travel trailer owner, it's a nice transition into the fifth wheel segment.
Right.
So it's really opened us up to a lot more customers, and it's our fastest growing segment right now within the Reflection line.
So yeah, I mean, I've kind of watched the Reflection line even before I was here at Grand Design. I saw it might have been the very first one ever made. When I was working at a dealership, we were looking at it, and I always found it interesting that with the Reflection line, it is incredibly accessible to people because there's a lot of people out there that want to make the jump to a fifth wheel. Normally, they have a truck that can't pull a big fifth wheel. Well, the 150 series came along and kind of squashed that. Now even half-ton trucks can pull this fifth wheel. And then, or maybe it was, like you mentioned, there's all these different features that people didn't want. They just wanted a fifth wheel, but they didn't want to spend, what they thought was crazy money on all these features that they may or may not need. And so now the 100 series is here and kind of fills that gap. And then you still have the full line Reflection, right? So so like for someone looking, they don't want to make that jump maybe to the influence of the Solitude, but they want those niceties, those features. There's kind of something for everyone, right?
Something for everybody. And yeah, you mentioned it, and I think it's exactly right. The 100 series starting with weights around 7,000 pounds and an MSRP at 50,000. Before that, you at least 20 to 30% higher to that, whether it's weight or price. So it definitely opens up to a lot more customers.
Mm-hmm. And you do see them everywhere. I mean, like the 100 series is somewhat new, but Reflections, they're just all over the road. I know that, people say that a lot. I see Reflections everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's just because they are so accessible and you can get them anywhere.
My last couple of visits to a campground were Grand Design rallies. So naturally there were some Reflections there. So, but it's before that, every campground that I had ever seen, you see a lot of Reflections, and I'm always proud at those rallies when they do the portion where it's raise your hand if you own a Reflection. It's always the biggest number.
Yeah. Well, I know when I'm out traveling this year, when I've been on some trips, we're going down the highway. My wife was like, hey, look, yep, it's a Reflection. Yep. No matter what state you're in, from here to Florida, wherever you're going, it's just, Reflection. I see a lot of those.
What do you see as the, what's on the horizon? What should people look forward to? Now, I will say before you answer that, we are part of a publicly traded company, and any forward-looking statements are speculative in nature. But with that being said,
I see your Robinhood app opened here. Yeah. Is this?
You just answer it the way you'd like with that in mind.
Yeah, so we really want to focus on the story of reflection and make sure that all of our segments are speaking to a different customer. So that is the future of reflection, keeping that 100 series about price, making the 150 series about towability. Jeff, I know you've been at shows with me before, and you get those customers that they don't necessarily care about the price, not that their budget's unlimited, but they want an experience from a towability standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
They want better suspension. They want it to be lighter. They want it to be half-ton towable. Nothing hurts my feelings more than a customer coming up to me and saying, that's not half-ton towable. We have the 150 series, and we purposefully don't market it as a true half-ton towable because not all floor plans fit every truck. But I really want to take that 150 series to be directionally towability focused and have features that make sense to the customer, and then grow the full reflection line to be my term or word is livability, but a luxury fifth wheel that has all the amenities that you're used to seeing in the reflection, something that you can take on a long trip, something you can park on a permanent site and use as a secondary residence.
Well, I'm going to take the role here of a prospective customer. Maybe I'm looking for a fifth wheel, and Grand Design. It's interesting because it really hasn't been but lately that we've been offering more, I guess you'd call it, budget friendly segments. So the Reflection 100 series you mentioned was about price. I think a lot of people will immediately think, okay, well, what did they take out? Is this built differently? Is this thing, I've heard Grand Design is built well, but, is this one different? Is this thing going to have less of a build quality than, say, a 150 series or a regular Reflection fifth wheel? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so I'll give a shout out to my predecessor, Tony Lizzie, now general manager of Reflection Imagine Transcend. I think he did a really good job on the 100 series with the focus being pride of ownership. People who buy a Reflection want to be a Reflection owner. We don't want to take that away from them with the 100 series. So we accomplished it with taking away things that we feel aren't necessary to go camping. Bigger refrigerator, bigger oven, bigger microwave, things that if you're going to use it 5 times a year, you don't want to spend $100,000. You can get into something for $50,000. You don't feel the obligation to go out there and camp, but you still own it and you have the ability to use it when you see fit. So we accomplished it by those type of measures instead of going in and saying, okay, this doesn't have the same warranty. We shrunk the frame. We changed the sidewall. We didn't do any of those things. Everything that you would see on a full Reflection from a construction standpoint is the same on that 100 series. I always like to talk about safety from a towing perspective. I think it's important to owners, and it's just as safe as a full Reflection. So you have something that costs $50,000 and it's going to have the same features as something that costs $100,000.
It's real well said. Well said. All right. So Ken, being that you're here, and I was thinking of who I would ask this of. And I think because of just the sheer amount of reflections that are made, I want to ask you this. A lot of people, there's people out there, and I think customers do this a lot. I mean, I do it. A lot of people do it. You'll sit there, you'll draw a floor plan on a napkin, or you'll think, oh man, that's a really cool thing. I wonder if I can incorporate this into an RV. And Tom and I have talked about, various things that are in RVs and, what could be in RVs. What is that process? Because I know, and I would imagine too, for you, there's people who come up and say, well, in this particular floor plan, why do you do this? Or why don't you do this? What is that process from like drawing on a napkin all the way down to, wow, there's a fifth wheel sitting here with that concept? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's complicated, and you get a lot of really fun, good suggestions from customers that you'd love to put in your product tomorrow. But the process is designed to protect our consumers, and really we want to take every opportunity that you have product wise and fully vet that process or that product. So it would look like I'd probably start by having a conversation with our lead purchasing agent and engineer And that's where a lot of time my heart gets broken and they tell me it won't fit or it's too heavy or any of those type of things. But at Grand Design, versus other places I've worked, we actually have a department that is code and compliance, and they do a lot of product testing. So anytime if it's a light, a microwave, whatever it may be, we send that to our product testing team, and they test electrical. They put it to the max extreme situation it's going to be in, and they tell they tell us if it's going to perform for a customer. That way, some exciting item that, again, a product manager who is in the sales role doesn't hurt the customer by putting in the wrong items in the product. So it's really a very involved process, and a lot of people touch every part that's added to every Grand Design product.
So from the time, let's say right here after the podcast, I were to say, hey, look at this drawing of a floor plan. I think it's a really great idea. It's going to be a really cool reflection, 56 feet long. It's 10 feet wide.
I like it so far.
It's got 12 slides on it, including the retractable roof. Let's just say, hey, come on now, boy can dream.
All right.
Yep. So, and this would be great for, a couples coach, clearly. So let's say this thing, I want you to build this from right now to when it was built. How long are you talking? Assuming, and just for clarity's sake, let's say it wasn't ridiculous. Let's say it was a 38 foot, just a normal floor plan. How long?
Yeah. So the first thing would be we'd have our engineers draw it up. Your napkin photo would I'm sure be really good. It wouldn't help anybody build anything. So it would start by the engineer drawing that up, and we would have a print pack that takes about 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the floor plan. Sometimes you get a lot of parts and pieces that are already in your RVs, which can shrink that process. Then we go into our proto phase. So we would run a prototype of the floor plan, kind of get everybody together, walk that prototype, show everybody from a design perspective, and also have all that team that we mentioned from a code and compliance come over and give their feedback. Then you would build a second proto. That process is somewhere, can be around 8 to 10 weeks. And then you would do a pilot run, which is a small run of that floor plan. I'd say all in, it would take you about 3 to 4 months to get that napkin into existence.
So in an ideal world, because you're building 2 prototypes, I assume the second one is based on feedback from the first.
Correct.
Right. Okay. And so let's say there was something you wanted to add, or like feedback that came back from codes and compliance that, you can't do this, you got to change this. Would that push out the timeline?
It would, yeah. Sometimes it starts it all over. Depending on how significant the changes are and how much the floor plan changes, you could be back to square one or Proto 1.2, as I like to call them. So yeah, it just would depend on the change. If we're moving a cabinet door, growing a cabinet opening, something like that, you can usually still stay in that process line. But if you're dealing with something that's out of code and compliance, yeah, a lot of times it's back to the drawing board.
Gotcha. And these codes and compliance, because I think that's something that comes up a lot. People compare, it's extremes, right? Either people don't realize there are codes to RVs that you have to follow, or they think, it's the same thing as like commercial housing code, commercial building codes or housing codes or things like that. What are these codes? What are they designed to do, and how do we navigate that? Because I think a lot of people think, why can't you build, this size of fifth wheel, or why can't you do this and that? It comes down to codes a lot of times, right?
Yeah, it does. It comes down to codes, whether it's an electrical code. You have some square footage guidelines that you have to stay in. You have to be able to fit it on the road, and it has to be under a certain length with your truck and trailer. And the list goes on, and there can be a lot of things that would be great in a fifth wheel or travel trailer that just don't make it through that process.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times we hear from folks, and they'll ask the question, well, why can't you, if I were to special order one and I just wanted this wall moved over here or this cabinet moved here, there's sometimes a misunderstanding of how these are built as far as assembly goes. Well, could you speak to that? Why can't we do one-offs?
Yeah, so it's all prints. It's engineering. When you want to move a bed or you want to move a cabinet, we have a print pack that we operate off of on the production floor, and that has to be changed and approved. If we just move a cabinet, we don't know what that does to the hitch weight. We don't know what that does to the overall weight. We toe test every proto. That is part of one of the testing phases. Is when I build a proto, the team comes over and they tow it. Sometimes, depending on how new or how different it is, we send it to secondary testing. So you can't just move something without making sure that it jives with all of the different phases of that process, because hitch weight is important. A lot of people, how many times do you get asked hitch weight at a consumer show?
A bunch.
It's a lot. So we have to keep all of that in mind, and we're really just not built to make those changes as quickly as a consumer would like to see.
Uh-oh, time to go.
Oh man, who could that be? It's Tony Lizzie, your boss. He wants to know what you've been doing for the past hour.
I better get out of here, guys.
Yeah, guys, this is an unauthorized podcast. You better get back to doing product things.
That's what they pay me for.
All right. See you guys later.
All right. Until next time.